I don't say this lightly, but this clip that I'm about to show you is probably the best clip I've ever seen on CNN. CNN generally does horrendous work. Horrendous work. They have Wolf Blitzer on 84 hours in the day where he regurgitates robot talking points. He's never made an interesting or controversial or edgy point in his life. He's a clown. Virtually every host has brain worms and they're partisan hacks, or they serve the establishment, or they're just incredibly uninteresting. I could criticize them all day long, and I do. I mean, that's half of my job, is to criticize CNN and mainstream media. But what you're about to see here, this might be the first time ever we're covering a CNN clip, and it's like, there's no caveats, no hedges, no, hey, I would tweak this or do this different. No. This clip is 100% credit to the host here, Fareed Zakaria. In fact, this clip is so good, I fear he's going to lose his job soon. Like, this is one of those things where if the higher ups see it, they'll be like, okay, he's donezo. How many years has he been on air? Okay, he's had a good run, but he's over because he just crossed a line. These are multiple taboos. He's poking these taboos with a stick right in the eye in this segment. So he's going to unequivocally call out the military-industrial complex in the most direct way I've ever seen in mainstream media. Watch this.
But first, here's my take. During his visit to Asia this week, Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin outlined his key concern.
And while we were focused on issues in the Middle East, China has modernized its military. And so our goal is to make sure that we maintain a competitive edge over China or anyone else.
Welcome to the new age of bloated Pentagon budgets, all to be justified by the great Chinese threat. What Austin calls America's edge over China is more like a chasm. The United States has nearly 20 times the number of nuclear warheads as China. It has twice the tonnage of warships at sea, including 11 nuclear-powered aircraft carriers, compared with China's 2 carriers, which are much less advanced. Washington has over 2,000 modern fighter jets, compared to Beijing's roughly 600, according to national security analyst Sebastian Roblin. And the U.S. deploys this power using a vast network of some 800 overseas bases. China has 3. China spends about $250 billion on its military, which is a third as much as the United States. Michael O'Hanlon of the Brookings Institution notes that if China were in NATO, we would berate it for inadequate burden sharing, since its military outlays fall well below NATO's 2% minimum. At the height of its imperial might in the late 19th century, when it ruled over a quarter of the world's population, Great Britain adopted a 2-power standard. Its navy had to be larger than the next 2 put together. U.S. military spending remains larger than the next 10 countries put together, 6 of which are Washington's close allies. America's intelligence budget alone, around $85 billion, is much larger than Russia's total defense spending. And yet the U.S. never imagines that this kind of spending could ever be seen by other countries as worrying or threatening. In requesting even more money for his region, the head of the Indo-Pacific Command, Admiral Davidson, remarked on China's increases in defense spending.
I cannot for the life of me understand some of the capabilities that they're putting in the field unless it is an aggressive posture.
But the fact that Washington is spending more on the military than it did at the height of the Vietnam War, even accounting for inflation, should threaten no one. In any case, the size of military spending is a misleading indicator of strength. Far more important are the objective sort and the political military strategy used to achieve those objectives. The U.S. has probably outspent the Taliban by, 10,000 to 1 in Afghanistan. And yet Washington has been unable to achieve its objective there, ensuring that the Kabul government rules the country uncontested. If the United States defines its goals carefully and assembles an intelligent and consistent political and military strategy to achieve them, it can succeed. Without that, millions of troops and trillions of dollars will not guarantee victory. Bigness is not a substitute for brains. Consider 2 contrasting exercises of power. America's F-35 fighter jet program, bedeviled by cost overruns and technical problems, will ultimately cost taxpayers $1.7 trillion, according to a document obtained by Bloomberg. China will likely spend a comparable amount of money on its Belt and Road Initiative, an ambitious set of loans, aid, and financing for infrastructure projects across the world aimed at creating greater interdependence with dozens of countries that are important to Beijing. Which do you think is money better spent? The Pentagon operates in a realm apart from any other government agency. It spends money on a scale and wastes money on a scale that is almost unimaginable. Every government agency is required to audit its accounts. But for decades, the Pentagon simply flouted this law. In 2018, it finally obeyed, paying $400 million for 1,200 auditors to examine its books. Yet it still could not get a clean bill of health. As Matt Taibbi notes in a brilliant expose of Pentagon accounting, the auditors were unable to pass the Pentagon or flunk it. They could only offer no opinion, explaining the military's empire of hundreds of acronymic accounting silos was too illogical to penetrate. The Defense Department has failed to pass 2 more audits. Having spent nearly 2 decades fighting wars in the Middle East without much success, the Pentagon will now revert to its favorite kind of conflict, a Cold War with a nuclear power. It can raise endless amounts of money to outpace China, even if nuclear deterrence makes it unlikely there will be an actual fighting war in Asia. Of course, there might be budget wars in Washington, but those are the battles the Pentagon knows how to win.
God damn, son. Exit stage left, you're fired. Like, there's got to be something going on behind the scenes. Either the higher-ups didn't see this, or if they did see this, Fareed Zakaria is getting a phone call. Because they don't, this is the stuff that we hear on YouTube, us, little peons, we get demonetized for this stuff. We get deranked in the algorithm for this stuff. That was a phenomenal segment. From beginning to end, every word of it was brilliant. In fact, he just educated me on some facts I didn't know. So he said, he was comparing the size and the scope of the U.S. military versus the Chinese military as we laughably proclaim that they're a gigantic threat to us and to world peace and whatever. He says, we have 2,000 fighter jets, they have 600 fighter jets. We have 800 military bases around the world, they have 3. They spend $250 billion on their military, which is 1/3 what we spend. We spend more than the next 10 biggest militaries combined, and 6 of those countries are our allies. Our intelligence agencies alone spend more than all of Russia's military budget. And the best point in there is, and this shows you how warped the mindset in the rest of mainstream media is. He points out, well, hold on now. Why is our military spending never described as aggressive or offensive or counterproductive or threatening to world peace? Every idiot in mainstream media is an American exceptionalist / American supremacist. So they just grandfather in our actions as by definition defensive and always correct and always coming from a place of morality and justice and being the world's police. Well, I got news for you. That's absurd. We are acting in the exact same way that empires previously have acted, in our own self-interest, by and large. Sure, we give a veneer, a facade, we act like, no, this is really about human rights and justice. Oh, is it? Saudi Arabia is one of our top allies. We give them money and weapons. We're aiding them in carrying out a genocide in Yemen. We've armed jihadists on the ground in Syria. Jihadists, the same people that attacked us on 9/11. So you sure this is really about human rights? One of our top allies in the region is Israel, an apartheid state. Are you sure? Oh, that's what we care so deeply about, human rights. Have you seen the history of the United States of America post-World War II? Have you seen that? Have you seen what we've done to Central and South America? How many times have we overthrown democratic governments to put in dictators? And then we laughably act like, no, the dictator we just put into power is actually, a small d Democrat, was democratically elected, is supported by the people. Absurd. So Fareed Zakaria is pointing out, how come our stuff is never viewed as a threat to world peace, but we get to point at much smaller militaries and act like, oh, how dare you be moving in such an aggressive fashion and spending more money on your military? It's a joke. It's the same reason why we don't have a leg to stand on to criticize other people for even violating international law. Why? Because violating international law is something we do on a Tuesday before breakfast. I mean, this is what it is. The war in Iraq was an illegal and offensive war against a country that didn't attack us. That's against U.S. law. That's against international law. That's against the Nuremberg Tribunal and the Geneva Conventions. The United Nations said, you can't do it. We said, go fuck yourself, and we did it anyway. Look at Afghanistan. What are we still doing in Afghanistan? The original idea was we got to get Osama bin Laden. That's why we're going there. He's been dead for so long. And I love how when that happened, everybody just... So we're just going to go ahead and stay here, even though the thing that we said was the objective is done. Iraq, we got to get Saddam. He's been dead for a long time too. oh, yeah, we did the thing that we said that was the goal of the thing, but what happened was me and Craig was by the Safeway and the sun was in my eyes, and we're going to end up just staying because we got to make sure that things and stuff is happening and whatnot. Are you kidding me? Who buys this shit? Listen, the main point is anybody who looks at this objectively for even a split second goes, oh my God, this is a farce. This is terrible. This is an empire acting like an empire. This is imperialism through and through. These are neoconservative war hawks in the establishment, and it's bipartisan. And it's a joke. And so the fact that other people in mainstream media do not point it out is such a damning indictment of mainstream media. And I give tremendous credit to Fareed Zakaria for this, because no doubt they will not tolerate this in the long term. There's no doubt. Because guess what? A lot of the advertisers in mainstream media, you guessed it, Raytheon, Boeing, Honeywell, Lockheed Martin, all the military-industrial complex goons. They do a lot of the advertising on the Sunday shows, for example, probably on CNN, on other outlets. And the reasoning is not because they want somebody to buy an F-35. They want somebody watching a Sunday show to buy an F-35. No. They're basically paying for a hands-off approach. Hey, we're going to fund you, but just know who's funding you. So don't do an expose on our no-bid contracts where we got massively wealthy and we built all these tanks and now they're sitting in a desert in Nevada. Don't do an expose on where some of our weapons are going to prop up dictatorships in the Middle East. Don't do an expose on any of this stuff. Don't do it. So that's the deal. And now Fareed Zakaria is messing up that deal. And again, I have unending credit for him on this front. I have no criticisms of that segment at all. From beginning to end, it was brilliant. Some other facts, he said the U.S. is spending more now on our military than we were spending at the height of the Vietnam War, even adjusting for inflation. That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. He points out that the F-35-2 cost $1.7 trillion to make, and it didn't work for a while. Guess what? Well, China's doing this thing called the Belt and Road Initiative, where China goes to developing countries and builds their infrastructure for them. So that's a new version of imperialism. That's what that is. So you basically buy their loyalty in a way. The US version of imperialism is use power, but it's not brute force, it's soft power, because we prop up people from their own countries to be their leaders and be subservient to the US and let us extract their natural resources. And we were an evolution from the previous way of doing it, the British Empire, for example, where there wouldn't even be a pretense of you guys are in control of your own business. They would just take something over by force. Look at what Britain did to India. They would just take it over by force and be like, we're here now and we're in charge. We're not doing the we're here and we're in charge. We go in there, do military action, then put somebody from their own country to be in charge, but they're puppets of the US. So this is the next evolution of what if we build your infrastructure? What if we make you an offer you can't refuse? And then you'll see effectively these countries would be making a deal with the devil, and there will be extraction and things of that nature from the imperialist power. But his point is, look at how much more intelligent their version of empire is versus our version of empire is. What do you think is money better spent? Effectively buying the loyalty? It's actually kind of like the Marshall Plan a little bit. So what do you think is more effective? Buying the loyalty of other countries through material well-being to some extent, and then later on saying, hey, remember when I helped you out? Or do what we're doing. I don't know, waste trillions of dollars on this jet that doesn't even work. It's because the military-industrial complex, it's a scam. It's a scam is what it is. As Smedley Butler said it, war's a racket. A lot of people are getting rich from war. That's what it is. And the final point is this. Guys, it's a ruse all along. This is what the deep state is, by the way. The intelligence agencies that are there from administration to administration, the military-industrial complex. And see, originally, they had the boogeyman of the Soviet Union. And it was, oh my God, we have to do whatever we can to defeat these people because communism is going to take over the world and we can't allow that. Then it became, okay, when the Soviet Union collapsed, we don't have an enemy, we can't justify these endlessly bloated, disgusting military budgets. Well, now, we had 9/11, we had the war on terror, so Al-Qaeda is the enemy, radical Islamic extremism, so now we need those bloated military budgets again. What do you want me to tell you? There's nothing we can do. We got to do what we got to do. Then now, that phase is coming to an end. At least it's not working anymore. The propaganda for the American public to accept the bloated military budgets. So now what are they doing? Now they've graduated to, Democrats half the time are going right back to Russia-gating, Cold War 2.0 stuff. Republicans all in a China. It's China-gate now. Be afraid. We have to do. What they're doing a genocide. We got to help. If you believe the United States is truly concerned about the Uyghur Muslims and about human rights, again, I have a bridge to sell you. They're simply not concerned about that. If we were so concerned about genocide, we would stop facilitating one in Yemen. You understand? And as Chomsky says, we're responsible for what we do. We are actively helping to facilitate a genocide in Yemen. It's a lot easier to bring about human rights in Yemen when we're actively on the wrong side of that, hurting people. Just stop actively hurting people. Stop participating in a genocide. That's how you make the world better. Not threaten to get into some sort of military confrontation to stop China from doing things that are bad. And I'm not commenting in any way, shape, or form on what's actually happening in China. Because I'm not an expert. I don't know what the fuck is going on, to be honest with you. I can't separate what's propaganda from what's real human rights abuses. Of course China's doing real human rights abuses. There's no doubt about that, because every power center does real human rights abuses. But I'm in no position to comment on what's happening there. All I could tell you is I know for sure the motivations of the U.S. government. And it is not at all to bring about human rights anywhere. So now the new justification for the endless bloated military budgets is China. And so here we are. And Fareed Zakaria is pointing it out. And now I'm hoping he stays on air. I've done many segments where I've criticized him, but after seeing this leads me to believe he's a little bit more independent-minded than perhaps any of us gave him credit for originally. But my guess is if the higher-ups see this, he's on borrowed time. They accept deviation every now and then from the party line and the narrative, but if he were to consistently do this, he'll be over here on YouTube with me.